There comes a moment in life when everything crumbles. The ground disappears beneath your feet. The people you loved are gone. The dreams you so carefully built turn to ashes before you, and you're left there, on your knees, staring into the absolute void and wondering only one thing: how do I go on from here? How do I take the next step when there's nothing left? Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the northern armies, general of the Felix legions, loyal servant of the true emperor Marcus Aurelius, knew exactly what that moment was like. He had absolutely everything a man could desire. A family that loved him, honor built over decades of battle, the respect of his soldiers, the power to influence the destiny of an empire, and in a matter of days, he lost absolutely everything. Not gradually, not with warnings, but brutally, instantaneously, irreversibly. And the most devastating thing? He lost everything for doing the right thing, for refusing to bow down to a tyrant, for choosing honor when he could have chosen survival. But here's what nobody tells you about Gladiator. What goes unnoticed when you watch the film purely for entertainment? This isn't a film about revenge. It's not just another story of a man seeking violent retribution. It's a meticulous manual, disguised as a historical epic, about building inner strength. It's a Stoic map for surviving, and more importantly, thriving when the whole world conspires against you. And today, for the next 15 minutes, we're going to decode the deep psychology behind Maximus. Not so you can watch the movie again and cry at the same scenes, but so you can understand the invisible psychological weapon he used to transform slavery into freedom, pain into purpose, and absolute loss into an eternal legacy. Now, in your own battles, because true strength, the kind no one can take from you, isn't in the sword you wield. It's in the disciplined mind that controls the hand holding the sword. And if you stay until the end of this video, the final principle we're going to reveal will completely change how you view adversity, loss, and new beginnings. Let's begin. Let's start with ground zero of pain, the moment that defines everything that comes after. Maximus returns home after refusing Commodus's offer of power. He narrowly escaped execution. He is wounded, exhausted, yet still runs desperately along the dusty roads of Hispania. Each step carries an obsessive hope to embrace his wife, to hold his son in his arms, to smell home, to return to the simple life he always valued more than all the gold of Rome. But when he arrives, when the farm finally appears on the horizon, something is wrong. There is no smoke from the chimneys. There is no movement. The silence is absolute. And then he sees hanging bodies, charred, unrecognizable. His wife, his son, everything that gave meaning to his existence, destroyed as a message, as punishment for his refusal to bow down. He falls to his knees on the land he himself cultivated, the land where his son used to play. And he lets out a cry that is not just of physical pain. It is the sound of a soul being torn apart. It is the moment when the world ceases to make sense. This scene is not just well-executed cinema. It is a visceral and precise representation of what Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, called psychic death. The moment when your entire identity, the whole structure of meaning you have built upon external pillars, is completely annihilated all at once. Maximus didn't just lose his family, although that was already unbearable. He lost his reason for being. He lost the future he had planned. He lost himself. And perhaps you know that feeling. Not necessarily in the same brutal way, not necessarily with the same physical violence, but you've been there, in that abyss, in that moment when a revealed betrayal shatters years of trust, an unexpected loss of someone fundamental in your life, a devastating diagnosis that rewrites your entire future, or a shattered dream you invested decades building, only to see it crumble in seconds. Maximus's pain is our pain. It is universal human pain. The feeling of utter powerlessness in the face of forces we cannot control. No matter how strong we are, the rage boiling in our chest with nowhere to release it, because the world isn't fair enough to offer a clear target. The paralyzing despair of not knowing how to take the next step when you can't even breathe properly. And here's the validation you need to hear. It's perfectly normal. It's perfectly human to feel like you won't be able to get up from this. That the pain is too great. That there's no way back. Maximus felt exactly that. One of Rome's greatest generals, a man who faced barbarian hordes without blinking, completely broken inside. And it is precisely at this 0 point, at this moment of total destruction, that the true journey begins. Because Maximus could have done what most people would do. Give up completely. Surrender to despair, as if it were an inevitable embrace. Let the pain consume him until nothing remained but an empty body, breathing by inertia. But he didn't do that. He did something completely different. Something that goes against all basic human instincts. And that something is what we're going to decode in the next few minutes. Maximus's journey from ground zero to the Colosseum arena is the perfect cinematic embodiment of what Jung called the fallen hero archetype. In analytical psychology, this is the mythical character who loses absolutely everything in the external world and is forced, against his will, to rebuild his entire identity from scratch. But this time, without any of the crutches or structures of the external world. He wakes up days later, chained, wounded, feverish, being sold like an animal in a slave market. From a general respected by an entire empire to human merchandise valued by the strength of his muscles. The fall could not be more brutal, more humiliating, more complete. A man who commanded legions now doesn't even control his own body. A man who decided the fate of battles now doesn't even decide what he will eat. And here lies the first profound psychological insight that most people miss. The forced loss of the external world, however painful, creates a rare opportunity for the construction of the internal world. When everything you used as a crutch is ripped away. When you can no longer say, I am a general, I am a father, I am a husband. You are forced to answer the most fundamental question. Who am I when all this is taken from me? Maximus is thrown into the arena of Proximo, a gladiator promoter. And in the first fights, he fights only for animal survival. Pure instinct. Muscle memory from decades of military training. There is no purpose, no meaning. Only the biological reflex of not wanting to die. But something crucial changes. He realizes a truth about the arena that transforms everything. The crowd doesn't just want blood. It wants meaning. It wants a story. It wants to believe that the men dying down there are more than just flesh. They are symbols of something greater. And that's exactly where Maximus finds his psychological leverage. He stops fighting merely to survive and begins to fight to communicate. Every victory becomes a message. Every movement in the arena becomes theater. And the crowd responds. They begin to love him, not because he is the strongest, although he is, but because he transforms senseless violence into meaningful narrative. On the other side of this psychological mirror, we have Commodus. And understanding Commodus is essential to understanding Maximus, because they are perfect opposites. Commodus is the archetype of the tyrannical and childish shadow. He is the child man who was never loved by his father, Marcus Aurelius, who obsessively and pathologically seeks external validation, who rules the largest empire in the world, but is ruled by his own uncontrolled emotions. Notice the devastating contrast. Maximus, a man in chains, a slave, without possessions, without family, without a homeland, is free inside. His mind is an inaccessible fortress. Commodus, emperor of Rome, owner of armies, controller of all known wealth, is a slave to his own insecurities, his emotional deprivation, his desperate need to be loved. In the arena, while Maximus wins the genuine love of the crowd through actions, Commodus tries to buy that love through bread and circuses. While Maximus fights for an inner purpose that no one can touch, Commodus battles emotional ghosts that no one can defeat. And here comes the foreshadowing, the clue the film gives you from the beginning, but that you only understand at the end. Maximus's true weapon was never his exceptional skill with the sword. It was never his physical strength or his military experience. It was his disciplined mind. the Stoic ability to separate, with surgical clarity, what he can control, his actions, his values, his purpose, his emotional responses from what he cannot control. Commodus's betrayal, the death of his family, the corruption of the empire, his status as a slave. And it's no coincidence that Marcus Aurelius, who in the film is presented as a father figure and mentor to Maximus, was in real life one of the greatest Stoic philosophers in history. His meditations remain one of the most powerful texts on psychological resilience ever written. And Maximus carries these teachings not as abstract theory, but as an invisible armor that protects him where no physical armor could protect him. In his mind. Let's understand exactly how this armor works. Stoicism is not just an ancient philosophy. It's a mental operating system for extreme crisis situations. And Maximus embodies three fundamental pillars of this philosophy so perfectly that it seems intentional. First pillar, the dichotomy of control. This is possibly the most important distinction you can make in your life. There are only two categories of things in the universe: things you control and things you don't control. The things you do control are surprisingly few. Your thoughts, your deliberate actions, your conscious emotional responses, your values, your character, everything else, and this includes practically everything else in the universe, you don't control. The actions of others, external events, the past, the future, people's opinions of you, the weather, the economy, death. Stoic wisdom lies not in trying to control the uncontrollable, which is the source of 99% of human suffering. Wisdom lies in investing 100% of your energy, your attention, your effort, only in what you can control, and accepting the rest with what the Stoics called equanimity, not passive resignation, but active and serene acceptance. Maximus cannot bring his family back from the dead. He cannot prevent Commodus's corrupt rise to the throne. He cannot change the fact that he is a slave. He cannot control the decisions of the Senate. He cannot stop men from trying to kill him in the arena. But he can absolutely control how he responds to each of these things. How he maintains his dignity even when chained. How he remains true to his purpose even when it seems impossible. There's a small but crucial scene in the film. Maximus is locked in his cell before a fight. Next, his owner tries to provoke him, to manipulate him emotionally, and Maximus simply doesn't take the bait. He remains silent, controlled, focused. Not because he doesn't feel anger or pain, but because he consciously chooses not to allow those emotions to govern his actions. That's the dichotomy of control in action. Second pillar, amor fati, love of destiny. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive concept of Stoicism. It's not passive resignation of the type, well, that's life. I accept it because I have no choice. It's the active acceptance, even the enthusiastic embrace, that absolutely everything that happens, however painful it may be at the moment, is part of a larger journey that is shaping you into something stronger. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "The impediment to action makes action advance. What stands in the way becomes the way." Think of this applied to Maximus. Being enslaved, which seemed like the end of everything, became the way for him to reach the Colosseum. Reaching the Colosseum became the way for him to confront Commodus publicly. Confronting Commodus publicly became the way for him to awaken the conscience of the Roman people. If Maximus had remained a general, honored and respected, he would never have had the emotional reach over the people that he had as a gladiator. The forced fall created the platform for the final impact. The obstacle became the path. And this isn't just pretty philosophy. It's profound psychological rewiring. When you train your mind to look for meaning and opportunity even in tragedy, you become psychologically invincible. Not because nothing bad happens to you, but because you always find a way to use the bad for something greater. Third pillar, memento mori. Remember that you will die. For the Stoics, the constant awareness of death is not morbid or depressing. It's the opposite. It's profoundly liberating. When you viscerally accept that your life is finite, that you can die at any moment, that nothing is guaranteed, every action gains existential weight. Every moment gains profound meaning. Every choice becomes crucial. Maximus does not fear death. He already died psychologically when he found his family destroyed. Everything after that is borrowed time, and that makes him psychologically invincible. Commodus tries to threaten him with death, and Maximus laughs. Because you can't threaten with death a man who has already fully accepted it. There's a powerful dialogue in the film. Maximus says, "Death smiles at me." All a man can do is smile back. It's not nihilism, it's a profound Stoic acceptance that death is inevitable. So the only relevant question is, how do you live until then? Now, here's the insider knowledge. The crucial distinction that separates Maximus from virtually every other revenge character in cinema. Think of iconic revenge characters. John Wick losing his dog, the Count of Monte Cristo betrayed by his friends, Kill Bill waking from a coma. What drives these characters? Visceral rage, burning hatred, destructive passion. Their revenge is fire. It's uncontrolled emotion channeled into violence. But Maximus? His vengeance is icy. It is cold, calculated, deliberate purpose. And here is the distinction that changes everything. He does not act primarily out of hatred for Commodus. He acts out of duty to the memory of Marcus Aurelius, out of loyalty to the dream of a republican Rome, governed by the Senate and not by tyrants, out of honor to his own word, to the promise he made. This is not emotional revenge. It is the fulfillment of an existential promise. It is a higher purpose. And this distinction is absolutely crucial from a psychological point of view, because when your motivation is emotional, you are vulnerable. Commodus tries several times to provoke him, manipulate him, break him emotionally. But Maximus remains unshaken. Not because he doesn't feel he feels deeply, but because he doesn't allow his feelings to govern his actions. He feels the pain. He feels the anger. But he acts based on principle, not passion. That's the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is reflexive. It's letting the external world control your internal life through emotional stimuli. Responding is conscious action. It's maintaining internal control, independent of external chaos. When someone betrays you, humiliates you, attacks you, do you react with the same destructive energy, perpetuating a cycle of pain, or do you respond with the stoic discipline of someone who knows exactly who they are and what they stand for, regardless of what they do to you? Maximus chooses to respond. Always. And that is what makes him not only a formidable warrior. And we arrive at the most iconic moment of the film. The scene that transcended cinema and entered pop culture. The scene that everyone knows, even those who have never seen Gladiator in its entirety. Maximus is in the Colosseum for the first time. It's no longer Proximo's provincial arena. It's the center of Roman power. 100,000 people are screaming, the greatest show in the known world. He has just led a small group of gladiators in a reenactment of the Battle of Carthage and, against all odds, won spectacularly. The crowd is in absolute ecstasy. They've never seen anything like it. Commodus, in the imperial box, is simultaneously fascinated and disturbed. Who is this gladiator? How does he command men like that? Why does the crowd instantly love him? He descends into the arena, accompanied by guards, to personally inspect the phenomenon. The crowd shouts, "Maximus! Maximus! Maximus!" the nickname they gave to the invincible masked gladiator. Commodus approaches, curious but cautious, and he asks, with imperial authority, "Why don't you remove your helmet and let us see your face?" And then it happens. The moment that changes everything. Maximus turns slowly, dramatically. He removes his helmet deliberately, and with a voice laden with all the pain he has survived, all the loss he has endured, but also all the strength he has rebuilt brick by brick from scratch, he says, "My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the northern armies, general of the Felix legions, loyal servant of the true emperor, Marcus Aurelius, father of a murdered son, husband of a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance. in this life or the next. Total silence. 100,000 people in absolute silence. And then Commodus realizes, the man he ordered executed, the ghost who should be dead and buried, is alive, is here, and now has the love of Rome. This is not merely a dramatic presentation. It is a psychological resurrection. It is what Jung would call a return to the true self, a completed individuation. Let me explain why this moment is so psychologically powerful. For months, Maximus lived under imposed identities. First, the anonymous slave. Then, the Spaniard, the nickname the other gladiators gave him. Then, Maximus, the name the crowd created for the masked hero. All of these are masks, personas in the Jungian sense, superficial identities that protect but also hide the true self. And in all these masks, there is an implicit message of shame. You cannot be who you truly are. You need to hide your true identity to survive. The world cannot know who you really are. But at that moment, Maximus tears off all the masks at once. He reintroduces himself to the world as who he truly is, no matter the cost. And notice the structure of the speech, because it's perfect. First, he asserts his identity: general, commander, loyal servant. Second, he names his losses: father of a murdered son, husband of a murdered wife. Third, he declares his purpose: I will have my vengeance. Identity, trauma, purpose, past, present, future, all integrated into a single statement. And notice the psychological power of what he does. Commodus had a whole plan. He was going to humiliate the gladiator, perhaps kill him for entertainment, reaffirm his power. But Maximus completely reverses the game in one sentence. By publicly stating his identity, he forces Commodus to acknowledge him. By naming his losses, he transforms victim into witness and accuser. By declaring his vengeance, he transforms fear into transparent purpose. He is no longer subject to Commodus's power. He has regained his inner strength. And the whole empire has witnessed it. Now, the question you need to answer with brutal honesty is, in what area of your life are you wearing a mask out of fear? Where are you hiding who you really are? Because you're afraid of rejection, judgment, or consequences? At work, are you hiding your true ambitions and genuine ideas because you're afraid of seeming arrogant or being rejected? In your relationships, are you suppressing your true needs and honest opinions to avoid conflict or abandonment? In your family, are you playing a role that isn't yours, following a script written for you that doesn't reflect who you really are, just to avoid disappointing others' expectations? The first step in developing Maximus's Stoic strength is radical authenticity. It's having the courage to look in the mirror and ask, who would I be if I weren't afraid of others' judgment? What would I do if I weren't afraid of failure? How would I live if I weren't afraid of rejection? And then, gradually, step by step, begin to live that response. Not impulsively or destructively, but deliberately and courageously. You don't need to give a dramatic speech in the Colosseum of your life, but you do need to start making small declarations of authenticity every day. Expressing what you truly think, even if it's controversial. Standing up for your values, even when it's inconvenient or socially uncomfortable. Because in the end, and this is what Maximus teaches us, true freedom is not being free from physical chains. It is being who you are, expressing your true values, living your authentic identity. The film ends where it began, in violence, in death, in loss. But the meaning is completely different. Maximus faces Commodus in a final duel in the Colosseum. But Commodus, cowardly and insecure to the very last moment, stabs him before the fight, securing an unfair advantage. He mortally wounds Maximus before a single blow is exchanged publicly. It is the ultimate betrayal of a man who never learned to fight with honor. But even wounded, even bleeding, Maximus wins. He disarms Commodus. The crowd shouts for him to kill the tyrannical emperor. But instead of executing him in a fit of rage, Maximus calmly orders, "Free my army. Honor the memory of Marcus Aurelius. Rome must be returned to the people." Even in the final moment, he doesn't act out of passion. He acts out of purpose. He keeps his promise. And only then, does he allow Commodus to die. Not in an explosion of violence, but in an almost casual, almost merciful gesture. And then Maximus falls. But notice his expression. There is no despair. There is no panic. There is peace. There is completeness. He turns to Lucilla, the woman who could have been his love if fate had been different, and whispers, "Is Lucius safe?" Even in death, he thinks of others. Even in his last breath, his focus is on the purpose fulfilled, not on his own survival. And then comes the final scene. Visually stunning and emotionally devastating. Maximus begins to see a vision of the Elysian fields, the paradise of Roman mythology. A door opens in golden light. He walks through it, and there is an endless field of golden wheat swaying in the wind, exactly like the field on his farm in Hispania. And there, at the end of the road, are his wife and son, waiting for him, smiling, reaching out their hands. He finally went home. Now, you need to understand the callback, the devastating emotional connection that closes the narrative and psychological circle. Remember that scene we analyzed at the beginning? Maximus kneeling before the charred bodies of his family. Now contrast this with this. Maximus falling in the arena, mortally wounded, but with eyes full of peace, fulfilling the promise he made to himself when he touched that land for the last time. I will see them again. The stark difference between these two scenes isn't in the external events. In both moments, he is surrounded by death and blood. The difference lies entirely in the internal world he rebuilt between one point and the other, in the meaning he created, in the purpose he kept alive even when everything else died. And here is the elixir that Maximus leaves us with, the profound psychological benefit that you can take into your life. You can lose absolutely everything in the outside world and still keep your soul intact, your essence preserved, your character unwavering. They can take away your job, your decades-long reputation, your accumulated wealth, your health that you took for granted, even the people you love more than anything. But there is something that no one, absolutely no one, can take from you without your permission. Your ability to choose how you respond, your core values, your self-defined purpose, who you decide to be in the face of adversity. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps and later wrote Man's Search for Meaning, expressed something that Maximus perfectly embodies. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response. In our response reside our growth and our freedom. Maximus lived entirely within that space, between pain and action, between loss and purpose, between physical enslavement and absolute psychological freedom. This space is small in temporal terms, sometimes milliseconds, but it is infinite in terms of meaning. And the ultimate benefit, the insight that can transform your life if you truly absorb it. When you build that inner fortress, when you anchor your identity in internal values and self-defined purpose instead of external validations and controllable circumstances, you become invincible in the deepest possible sense, not because nothing can physically hurt you. Maximus was terribly hurt, not because nothing can break you emotionally. Maximus suffered immensely, but because nothing can destroy you existentially. Nothing can erase who you are. Nothing can steal your meaning if you are the one who decides what that meaning is. The storm will come. It always does. Loss is inevitable. Betrayal is possible. Failure is likely. But you remain standing. Not because you are strong enough to stop the storm from coming, but because you have built deep enough psychological roots to continue standing after the storm has passed. And not just standing, but growing towards the sun. So, after decoding Maximus's entire psychological journey, What have we really learned? What are the practical lessons you can start applying today, right now, in your own battles? First lesson: true freedom is not the absence of chains. It is the ability to choose who you are while wearing them. Maximus was literally enslaved, but remained free where it truly matters. In his mind, what chains are you wearing? They might be family expectations, financial limitations, health conditions, or circumstances you didn't choose. The question isn't how to magically get rid of them. The question is, who do you choose to be despite them? Second lesson: true strength is not about having an invincible body or a life without problems. Strength is about having a mind disciplined enough to control what you can control and serenely accept what you cannot. Practice the dichotomy of control daily. Before reacting to any situation, ask yourself, is this within my control? If yes, act. If not, accept it and redirect your energy. Third lesson: purpose isn't something you find on good days when everything is working. It's something you deliberately build on the darkest days, when it seems like there's no reason to go on. Maximus transformed the pain of loss into an engine for a greater purpose. What pain are you carrying that could be transformed into fuel for something meaningful? Fourth lesson: authenticity is not a luxury for when everything is well and safe. It is an absolute necessity for when everything is destroyed and chaotic. Because in the end, when everything else is taken away, the only thing that remains is who you truly are. Stop wearing masks out of fear. Start presenting yourself to the world with your truth, gradually, but deliberately. And the fifth lesson, perhaps the most important: you will die. Memento mori. This isn't morbid. It's the most liberating reminder possible. If you're going to die anyway, if nothing is permanent, if everything can be lost at any moment, then the only relevant question is, how do you want to live until then? What legacy do you want to leave? What version of yourself do you want to be until your last breath? Maximus answered these questions with absolute clarity, and he died free, complete, in peace. Now it's your turn to answer. Today, right now, choose an area of your life where you're living behind a mask, where you're being controlled by external circumstances, where you've lost touch with your true purpose, and take a small step, just one, towards Stoic authenticity. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be an honest conversation you've been avoiding, a decision aligned with your true values, a polite refusal of something that doesn't resonate with who you are. Build your inner fortress one brick at a time, one choice at a time. Because the world can be a brutal coliseum, full of people trying to destroy you, full of circumstances trying to break you. But you can decide whether you will be just another anonymous slave waiting for death, or whether you will turn around, take off your helmet, and say to the world, "This is my name, this is my truth. These are my values." And nothing, absolutely nothing, can take that away from me. But the Stoic hero's journey is only one of the possible psychological architectures. Maximus used revenge to restore honor. He remained righteous even when the whole world tried to corrupt him. He chose duty over comfort, purpose over survival, inner freedom over external power. But what happens when honor is forgotten and only power matters? When the family, which should be sacred, transforms into a machine of violence and betrayal? When loyalty is corrupted into silent complicity? When a good man, with every intention of staying out of the darkness, is dragged into it and becomes the very demon he swore he would never become? In our next video, we'll delve into the dark psychology of the Godfather. We'll decode how Michael Corleone, the war veteran who wanted absolutely nothing to do with the family business, the only Corleone with a real chance of being different, transformed into the most brutal and isolated Don of them all. We'll understand the devastating psychological cost of unbridled ambition. We'll analyze how power corrupts not through obvious seduction, but through small justifications, small compromises, small betrayals of oneself that accumulate until you no longer recognize who is looking back in the mirror. If you want to understand the psychological alchemy of how good transforms into evil, how pure intentions become corrupted into monstrous actions, and how we can recognize these patterns in our own lives before it's too late, don't miss the next video. Turn on notifications. Leave a like if this content added something to your journey, and we'll see you in the next review. Strength and honor.